What's going on, Team Tactile? Want to take it a little easy this week with the video and go over lubing of switches. Now in the keyboard world, this is considered a modification. You start looking at all of your mods that you can do, lubing comes up, and it is a modification. It does change some things, but overall it's important to know there's a lot of videos out there, but maybe not one from this year. So I figured I would take everyone through my process because we're going to be using these switches for an upcoming keyboard build, and they were just a really good price unlubed from the factory. So with that, let's take a look at all of the supplies you may or may not need for lubing your switches. So what do you want to have on hand for switch lubing? Well, you need a brush for lubing your switches. You may want some tweezers. Some people will use a switch holder, stem holder, for kind of the same thing. This is just a little prong one. A lot of these kind of extra things are available pretty cheap on Amazon. You will need some lube. These are two examples here. G-Lube's actually a little thicker. Krytox 205 G0 is something you'll hear about nonstop in the keyboard world. And I'll be honest, if you're somebody who likes to resell things, I even see people talking about what lube was used to lube their switches when you're in like the market for secondhand things. So there could be a benefit for springing for stuff like this. G-Lube doesn't bother me at all. I actually like to use it for stabilizers because it's a little thicker. If you're going to do your springs as well, possibly in bulk, you may want to have some oil because this is just a little easier to get all over the spring. And then finally, you're going to want to have your switch opener. So this has just both switch openers on the sides there, so no matter the switches I have, I can open them with this. And I guess the true last but not least is going to be your switches. All right, so we've talked about the tools that you may need for doing your switch lubing. And I actually have like two of these in the bottom here that are already lubed, but a lot of the videos are going to talk about lubing, and we can talk about one individually, but nobody talks about the mass lubing, if you will, because there's just so many switches that need to get done for you to finish your keyboard build. And I love that everyone's willing to show you how to do one, but let's talk about how to do all of these. So we're going to open all of these up and just get going. So one by one, these are just going to get popped open, and we're going to separate all the parts. Lubing your switch, you're really just looking to make any point of rubbing smoother, right? So we already know that these channels on both sides are going to have something running up and down them. So we want to keep that lubed, right? You know that this bottom ring is going to have something inside it and around it. And then you know the bottom kind of floor might have some contact as well. You're going to leave the metal part alone because that has been said to possibly mess things up. And that's really all you're going to have to do for your bottom switch. Or your bottom housing, excuse me. The next piece that you're going to get to is your springs. Now, springs are easy when you do them this way. What we're going to do is we have them in a bag. A Tupperware container works as well. Probably a little better because it has shape to it. We're going to grab some oil. I just bought some cheapo super lube off of Amazon. And we're just going to take this, drop some into the bag with all of this, because the little goes a long way when it comes to lubing stuff. We're going to cap this back up so that we don't make a mess. And then if you're using a bag like me, you're probably going to want to put some air in it. So now we have a spring balloon, right? So all I did was closed majority of it, left a corner open, blew air in it, and then sealed it. And now we can just shake all this up. And that's why springs are the easy part, because just like that, you can see kind of across the bag, it's got a bunch on it, and these are covered. forewarning, if you're using Tupperware containers, ask your wife, your partner, your significant other first, because if you start taking all of the Tupperware for keyboard modding and maintenance, may not end too well. But at this point, you may want some tweezers, because again, those springs are going to be covered in oil, which again, you can do this manually. You can grab a spring and just go through it if you want. But in theory, I don't even know if it's going to pick up on any of this, but we have a lubed spring. And what I like to do is then start building these out. So that one would go in there. We can actually drop it into all of them if we want, one by one. And the only thing that, I'll be honest, people don't talk about enough when you're doing this with the springs, and I drop some, is what happened there is that they do get kind of pressed against each other. They can stick together. You know, it's not the end of the world, but you might have to get your hands a little lubey to undo some of that. But again, not the end of the world. So let's go ahead and get all of these springs in. Just like that, you have your switches slowly starting to come together, so you can see them all standing up there. So we've talked about the bottom, we've done the top. Again, this is my preferred way. We're just going to build them out. So let's actually finish up a switch here just so we know. But the next step would be to look at the stem itself. And so what you're going to do is find something to hold the stem. You can use a tweezer, right? Or you can buy these cheapo holders on Amazon. Both are pretty cheap, you know, pretty easy to hold either. I just like that, you know, for something like this, I can go like that, hold on to it, and not have an issue. So we are lubing tactile switches, which means we're going to avoid those little feet down here. If I can, yep, there we go. But pretty much everything else is open for lubing. And that just means we're going to hit this raised part here because that's what fits into the channel up until the feet there. Same with the other side, right? Just until you get kind of to your legs or feet. And then, you know, you may have some kind of interaction on the stem as well. So I'm just going to hit that real quick. And that's all there is to it. Then you're going to drop it in facing the proper directions, those little feet facing towards the metal piece. And again, you're going to go one by one once you get through this whole kind of pack here. And then the last piece is going to be your top housing. And again, lubing is just about reducing the friction. We want to make things glide, right? So you can see in here, you kind of have this channel on both sides, and that's kind of your main point of interaction, right? The rest of the housing sits around it. So we know that's what is going to interact with the stem. So we're just going to throw some lube there. And then we're just going to pop that right on. And you can see this is why it's nice to have something that you're going to use as a lubing station, because you can just kind of construct them in an assembly line. And just like that, we have lubed our switch. And you can kind of hear a difference maybe on the mic. A little deeper, but overall excessively smoother. And that's what we're going for. So that scratchiness from the beginning is gone. And that's all there is to it. Again, just follow down the line and, you know, lube all these switches. And next thing you know, you move on to the next pack, because chances are, unless you enjoy really, really tiny keyboards, you have to do a bunch more of these. So that has been kind of my quick guide to lubing your keyboard switches. As usual, I appreciate everyone hanging out with me through this video. More to come. I'm actually going to be using these switches to learn to solder, so that video is on its way. So this is kind of just something I had to get done, so I figured I'd make a video about it. I know that there's tons out there, but we appreciate you flying with Tactile Talk on your journey on learning how to lube switches, and I will see you all in the next one.